The former National Treasury Director General Lungisa Fuzile continues with his testimony at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture this morning. He's expected to shed some light on what transpired during a meeting he held with the former Deputy Minister of Finance, Mcebisi Jonas. The meeting discussed how Jonas ended up at the Saxonwold home of the controversial Gupta family. Yesterday, Fuzile testified about a telephone call he received from the chairperson of the ANC's subcommittee on economic transformation, Enoch Godongwana. For a recap of what we can expect from his testimony this morning, we now cross to our senior political reporter, Mzwandile Mbeje. A very good morning, Mzwai. Explosive revelations from Fuzile yesterday. What were some of the highlights of his testimony?
Thank you very much, Desiree. Indeed, we expect the former DG to continue with his evidence here today, this morning, saying a number of things that were communicated to him by a number of people after the former Minister of Finance and Gordhan had been removed. But also what we expect today here at Desiree is that the current DG, Dondo Muhajane, will also take the stand. So basically he will be able really to shed more light. Remember, he is the current DG, so he should be able to have access to any documentation in case he needs perhaps to remind himself of things that may have happened. And of course, that kind of experience that they all went through. But with the former DG, Lungisa Fuzile, so it was quite interesting to hear him recount how it all happened. Remember, he had declared that he had got very, very, very close to Minister Nene, so it affected him as well when Mr. Nene was fired. But perhaps more instructive for Mr. Fuzile is the phone call that he got from the chairperson of the Economic Transformation subcommittee of the ANC, Enoch Godongwana, who basically told him that, well, as Nene goes, you are getting the so-called Gupta minister. Let's take a listen.
That evening, I received a call from Mr. Godongwana, who said, and I quote, "You are now going to get a Gupta minister who will arrive with advisors," unquote, or close quote. 18 goes on to say, I asked him to elaborate what he meant. He said, I should watch it. My new minister is likely to come with advisors he does not know. They would be given to him. I put given because that's his word, and I think it's a powerful word in this context, to him by the Guptas. And as I say, I've used the word here, maybe I used bewildered. I was perplexed.
Sorry, what I haven't been able to determine from what the former DG said was the tone of that call. Was it an instruction to say, toe the line? Or was it a heads up to say, I'm warning you, this is what's going to happen? Have you been able to pick up that difference?
So basically what Enoch Godongwana was conveying to the former DG was that, well, now that Minister Nene is gone, so I hope you are aware what is the talk, what is the rumor mill, basically. Because he got that call when Minister Nene was already fired. Okay. He said, well, Mr. Fuzile, you are going to get a Gupta minister. And then Mr. Fuzile basically said, I mean, what do you mean, Mr. Godongwana? So what does that actually mean? And then he says to him, well, as DGs, don't you talk to each other? So basically, which suggested that Desiree, this talk may have been around, may have, those who were in the same circles probably knew that someone else was coming. Because from the tone of the former DG, he basically said he had just heard about someone who was a backbencher. So, and then now, later on, when he met a number of other people, so then he was able to really connect the dots, as they say, to say, oh, that's probably what Mr. Godongwana was saying, because after that, he also spoke to the former former Deputy Minister of Finance, Mcebisi Jonas, who basically said, you know what, when I met the Guptas, they had said they will even give you the advisors, and their first job, really the first job of the new minister would be to get rid of the 4 officials in the Treasury. That includes Lungisa Fuzile. So basically, it was the kind of talk that he says initially you didn't think it's true, but when you saw it happened, then you believed it.
So you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that the current Director General Dodo Mokgajane will be testifying today, but what's interesting about him is that not only is he current, but he was also at Treasury as a senior official when all of these things transpired. So it'll be interesting to see if he corroborates Mr. Fuzile's testimony from yesterday when he comes onto the stand, so to speak.
Absolutely, Desiree. Remember, when you listened to the evidence of Minister Gordhan, so one of the things really he kept saying was that there was an attempt to capture Treasury. So then when Minister Nene then was fired and then replaced by Minister Van Rooyen, and then obviously due to the markets and perhaps opposition to the appointment of Des Van Rooyen, so Minister Gordhan had to be returned to that position. So what he basically says is that, a month into office, he started getting this kind of pressure because it appeared he may have derailed the plan for those who wanted to capture the Treasury. And at the time, Dondo Mokgajane was one of the key advisors of Minister Gordhan. So it will be very interesting, really, to share some of the experience that he is aware of. And remember, Desiree, the meeting that happened between Minister Gordhan and a businessman from India, Mr. Ambani. So Minister Gordhan says in that meeting, he doesn't remember who else was there, but he says, based on what his key advisor then, Mr. Mokgajane, so one of the Gupta brothers was there. So you can see this is someone really who would be able to share a number of things. Minister Gordhan would also say, well, because I'm a bit old, I may forget some of the things, but Dondo Mokgajane should be able to remember other things. So he is really expected to shed more light to perhaps either corroborate what the former DG will be saying or the minister himself has been saying, because this is one person really who has been there through and through.
What has been your sense of Mr. Pravin Gordhan's testimony, especially how he wrapped up his testimony where he really used that opportunity to hit back at the EFF?
Minister Gordhan really, his 3 days spent here was really about laying the ground, telling us about processes, and then using his favorite words, connecting the dots, and now realizing why an event A happened, because it made sense if you saw what event A, how it happened, and it led to event B. So you really could see that there was some kind of really plan to do something. But interestingly, as you say, when he was busy giving his evidence here inside, so there were people outside in the form of the BLF and the EFF. So those ones have been very clear to say Minister Gordhan is not an honest man. He needs to vacate the position. Particularly the EFF, they've been really here for the whole 3 days the minister has been giving evidence. So accusing him of all sorts of things. They went as far as to say His daughter has an account in Canada, so he's got tenders in various departments. So that is what really got Minister Gordhan to say that statement at the end, basically rebutting all of that. And not only rebutting that, also challenging those who are making those kinds of allegations at Desiree to say, so if people believe that they have evidence that could really implicate someone like himself, so they need to come to the commission, because this is the platform really that will be able to ventilate all these questions. I mean, he said, it's pointless just shouting and tarnishing people's names, yet you are not able really to back that one up. So he said, I mean, you can do that to him because he's a political activist, but then it goes a bit too far when it goes to the family, particularly if it's not true. I mean, he said, he went on to say his daughter is not doing any business with the state. So basically, he showed a little bit of anger, I mean, really, and frustration that, I mean, his family is getting dragged into all of this when he is the man, really, that they should deal with if they have something to do with him.
That rebuttal you refer to, the ANC is going further this afternoon, responding to those allegations made against Minister Gordhan. What are some of the, do you know what the content of the ANC media briefing, what we can expect from them?
Absolutely. I mean, they've made it clear that they've come here to really defend what Minister Gordhan has been saying, and of course defend themselves. Because remember, I mean, since this commission started, many people have been saying the ANC is on trial, and the ANC has been at pains to try and say, no, it's just individuals really who may have done wrong things. That is why them as a party are encouraging whoever has some sort of knowledge and information about what happened to the state capture. So given, for example, what a political party or political parties did outside, I mean, accusing Minister Gordhan of all sorts of things, so I think they feel duty-bound really to come and protect one of their own. I mean, you may have seen, for example, from the chief whip of the ANC, Jackson Mthembu, he's been really livid about what the EFF have been saying, so tweeting to say, you know what, these guys, I mean, can't say this to someone as honorable as Mr. Gordhan, I mean, in his view. So, in fact, Mr. Mthembu went as far as to say what John Steenhuisen of the DA said of the EFF, calling them VPS looters. He said he was correct. He was correct, because they feel what the EFF and perhaps the BLF to some extent have been doing to Minister Gordhan is not fair. They are it's just a politics of distraction, and then they are not really addressing the key issues. And I think they'll make that call again, Desiree, to say if really these entities feel that they have a strong case against Minister Gordhan, so here is the platform. They can come and share it with the nation and share it with the judge, so that when the judge concludes at the end, is able to really make a proper determination as to who is in the wrong or who is in the right.
Mzwai, thank you so much for that look back. And scene setter today, it's the former Director General, Lungisa Fuzile, finishing up his testimony, and then the current Director General. Are those the only ones testifying?
We understand there could be another official as well from the Treasury, but the ones that have been confirmed and we know their names. In fact, I've actually seen the current DG, Dondo Mohajan. I've just had a few words with him saying, well, so we will also get the opportunity to hear his side of the story. So I've seen him. So basically, I am certain of the two individuals that will give their testimony today. And we understand there will be a third one, but I do not know the identity of that individual as yet.
Thank you so much. We'll be looking out for developments at the state capture inquiry out in Parktown this morning. Our reporter there, Mzwandile Mbeje. All right, we have